My name is Glenn Manning. I'm the Senior Project Manager for Caring Schools at Making Caring Common, a project at Harvard Graduate School of Education. I want to thank you for taking the time to tune in today and sharing with us your ideas and any questions that you may have. We're so glad to have this space with you. I really want to be able to share tools, tips, and tricks to help build in young folks a commitment to their community, an ability to care about others, and build strong relationships. We're always excited to hear from you. So if you have thoughts or ideas about ways that we could modify or advance on the ideas that we're going to share with you today, I hope you'll get in touch with me. You can email me directly at caringschools with an S at makingcaringcommon.org. You should see that email address right on the screen, right under my name. Also invite you to visit our webpage, sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media. We'll go ahead and drop a link so that you can do that. I'm also going to have us drop a link for the Caring Schools Network, which is a terrific way to partner with Making Caring Common, collaborate with us to gather good information about the experiences of your students, staff, and families, and then follow up on that with really targeted action plans and strategies that hone in on the areas that we think could be ripe for growth and lean on those areas of strength. Really part of a continuous process of school improvement, and is focused primarily on building relationships and strong school communities. So hope that you'll get in touch with us if you have any questions about that. With all of that said, again, hope that you'll hold on to questions if they're big and you think that lots of people could benefit from them. If not, if you have questions that are very specific to you right now, feel free to hit up the chat, and Elise can try and troubleshoot with you if it's a tech problem, or maybe follow up offline with us as well if you have additional questions after the webinar. In terms of an agenda today, we'll cover quickly our learning goals, and then we'll dive right in and start to discuss the elements of deep listening and caring questions, as well as sort of talk a little bit about how to help develop in young people these important skills. And we'll do that by taking a close look at a strategy, listening deeply. We have converted this strategy to be used both in person and in online environments. So I hope that you find there what you need, no matter what school looks like for you right now. At the end, again, as I said, we'll be sure to hold some time for questions. So again, if you think that a question you have could be a question that others have, I hope that you'll go ahead and type that into the chat or into the Q&A section, and others can upvote that question if it's theirs as well. All right. So today we have two big learning goals. First, we're going to hopefully help you walk away with a tool, a way of really sort of getting a sense of students' listening skills, and also talk a little bit about what listening deeply to others is and how it can benefit us. Second, we hope that you walk away from this webinar really ready to implement this strategy for developing these skills in students. And, I think I really encourage you to modify these strategies, to change them in ways that meet the needs of your students in your local context. So if we can be helpful in that regard, I hope that you will let me know or Elise know. I love doing that with educators. So it's really one of my favorite parts of the job. So hope you'll get in touch. Also, we will go ahead and share the actual strategy in the chat if we haven't already. Looks like Elise is beating me to the punch there. That's great. Thank you so much, Elise. So do take a look at that, because I think it will be helpful as I talk through the strategy a little bit to have a sense of what it is I'm referring to. There's a lot of great information there. So don't feel as though you need to read through all of it right now, but you can follow along if that's helpful. In this strategy, it's going to be important to understand the skill that we're really asking students to practice. These are some of the highest leverage skills that really support students in building strong relationships and contribute to a strong school community and culture. And I think that these are skills that are not just important for students. I was actually just saying to Elise as we were looking through the strategy before we jumped on the webinar. If I practiced these skills every day, I think that my life would be easier in a wide range of ways and across different relationships. So, I really encourage you to be practicing this at home, at school, at work, in the variety of different ways that you engage with people that you come in contact with. We've identified different elements of deep listening in particular, and those are body language, focus, and expressing empathy. We'll walk through each of these skills in a second and speak about ways to practice them with your students and your colleagues. When we speak about body language with students, it's important for them to understand that this form of communication can send really powerful messages to the folks with whom we're in contact with, and can sometimes even convey as much or more information than the words that we say. And I think that this is something some students don't know. So it is important to address this directly. It's also true that young folks, especially pre-adolescents, are still making those contacts in the brain between the prefrontal cortex, that sort of part that sort of develops and connects to the amygdala and that sort of emotional response center, only during that maturation process between adolescence and adulthood. And so for many students, they don't even know what their body language looks like. So kind of really addressing this and the importance of body language, I think, can go a really long way. I think it's even more important now that we're remote, that we consider this. We've lost, to some extent, an ability to see and interpret micro expressions. And just the little indications that people agree with us or disagree with us or care about us that we can sort of convey by way of our body language. A lot of that's gone out the window in this current environment where many of us are online. Additionally, because this form of communication can express thoughts or feelings, body language that is, we're often unaware of the messages that we're actually sending. So body language should be an area of focus, I think, across the school year. This isn't something that we talk about once and then put down. One way to do this is to point out ways that students position themselves, perhaps, in relation to a speaker, and ask whether or not the position and their gestures maybe convey real, true, deep listening. This could be, part of a role play, or it could actually be in real time. Of course, you want to make sure that students don't feel put upon in that moment. You may even be pointing to your own listening body language and sort of saying, I think I could do better in this way, or this is an example of what I mean when I say face your speaker. Good examples, again, are things like eye contact, of course, nodding, facing forward or toward a speaker, right? As I said a second ago. I think some bad examples would be things like slouching, turning sideways, or having your arms crossed at certain times. Some facial expressions that might communicate disapproval or even disgust, or things like eye rolling can be, again, things that young people especially don't even know they're doing. So we want to be really clear about what it is we mean by good body language. When discussing body language with students, again, really important to kind of note that these expressions can vary. Nonverbal gestures can vary and be quite different depending on cultural norms. So very important for us, as always, as educators, to remember that we have a wide range of cultural backgrounds walking into the classroom, even if that is a virtual classroom, of course. So, for example, in some cultures, making eye contact would be considered inappropriate. In some cultures, looking downward can be a sign of respect for an elder. Of course, rather than assume these things about our students, we should ask them about their expectations, the norms, their experiences in schools and at home. And of course, it's a balance between recognizing those norms and those values or cultural values around body language, and helping our students understand that in an American context, perhaps in the context in which they're learning and living, that there are different sets of norms and expectations, and kind of being sensitive to both of those sides. Okay, in terms of the second element, we're going to be thinking a little bit here about focus. What we want students to do is be attuned to both how they demonstrate focus externally and how they're thinking internally, what that is that they're actually focused on inside of their head. It's easy to lose focus. At this time, it's always been easy to lose focus, but in this time in particular, especially since, as I said a minute ago, we're often communicating through the computer, through digital media. It's a device that can be really distracting, right? We've got pop-ups, we've got a never-ending sort of array of entertaining and distracting websites and apps and all kinds of other stuff. So it'll be important for, I think, both in-person and virtual interactions to minimize those sort of outside distractions, such as our phones in particular, but other noises in the background, if at all possible. Of course, this is also something that we need to be culturally sensitive to. In many cases, students can't minimize the background noises. And so that's something that we want to be aware of, and maybe even address verbally with our students and say, we understand that, you might not be able to mute yourself in a way that decreases that background noise. We want to advise students on how to get rid of those distractions, if at all possible, and demonstrate focus by looking at the speaker, offering sounds that really affirm that we're focused on them. That can come in a whole bunch of different ways. Beyond the external demonstrations, however, we also really want students to understand that things are going on inside of themselves as they listen to others. Are they kind of truly listening, right, to what the person is saying, or are they waiting for their turn to talk? I know that I'm guilty of this from time to time, so it's something I try to focus on. They should try to tune into what it is that their peer, or it might be an adult, is saying and feeling. While really, if we can, try to minimize our own internal dialogue and judgments. It's very, very difficult, especially if students have little or no practice in this arena. I think in that regard, important to note, we're not going to get this right every single time. There are going to be plenty of times when we're listening to others and we're thinking about all kinds of other things. Recognizing that at first can be a great first step, okay? The last part, or last tool in terms of deep listening, is expressing empathy. And it's really, in many ways, the cornerstone of deep listening. We want students to think less about how they would feel or think in a given situation, and really more about the speaker. That's what we mean by empathy, is when we kind of understand the thoughts and feelings of others and show that we really care about their experiences. For students, this may look like asking questions in response to what they hear, certain kinds of questions. They can also paraphrase what their partner maybe said with a sentence like, for example, so what I heard you say was, is that right? Right? That's a caring question. It shows, I think I heard what you said. Do you want to add anything to that? Right? I care that I get this right. Or they may simply attempt to understand what their partner's feeling by saying something like, I understand why you'd feel blank. We might even be asking, do you feel blank? Okay, I understand why you might feel that way. So we want to avoid things like asking the same question over and over again, of course. We want to avoid bringing up our own story kind of immediately after someone's done speaking. I think many of us probably know what that feels like. We get done telling a story or sharing something important. Somebody immediately either one-ups us or has like a totally different thought or different story, and kind of feels like, oh, I kind of had hoped we'd be able to talk about that a little more. We want to, of course, avoid misrepresenting what other people say. That might be more important right now in particular than perhaps ever before in students' academic career. And of course, telling people that what they felt was wrong or bad or inappropriate is a surefire way to sort of shut folks down. So trying to avoid that and instead doing the exact opposite and saying things like, I think what I'm hearing you say is that you feel this way, and that's valid. Your feelings about this are totally rational and normal. It doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything people say, but we should try to avoid it as best we can, minimizing other people's feelings. And okay, so role playing, I have always found it really fun. When I was in the classroom, I loved role playing, but I would always get lots of groans from certain students. Others found it really helpful. And I think a lot of students can benefit from seeing exemplars and asking questions in real time, and really kind of building skills in this way. So you might ask for a student volunteer to do some role playing with you. You might even have two students up on stage, so to speak. And again, this will look different depending on if you're in person or online. But basically, we're hoping to have folks, students engage in some of these skills at least one time before breaking into pairs and doing it on their own. I try to be sure to choose a fun prompt, something that is going to really kind of catch them and engage them. You'll know what that is, hopefully, even better than I could based on your students and their backgrounds. But it could be something like, what's your dream vacation, right? If so many of us are dreaming of vacation right now, right? The warm sun on the face, for those of you in the northern part of the US, it's starting to get awfully dark out there. So, maybe a dream vacation, or what would you do if you hit the lottery? What would be the first thing you'd do? Something like that. That's kind of fun. One really important component, I think, of the strategy is practice. So make sure to kind of highlight and encourage students who are demonstrating good body language, good focus, and really kind of expressions of empathy. So students are more likely to practice those skills. Not only the students that you identify, but others can look to them and say, okay, this is what it is that we mean when we're talking about these components of deep listening and asking caring questions. And once you've finished, I would ask the question of the class, or I would take kind of a pulse of the class. What did they notice? What did they notice about how they knew whether each person that they were speaking with was listening actively, right? What kinds of observations led them to believe this? You might even want to record answers and keep those in a central place so that students can refer to them later, those responses. You'll have students repeat this protocol on their own across several lessons in order to kind of really continue getting that practice. Really, really important that they have lots of opportunities. Like I said at the beginning, none of us are going to get this right every time. For many of us, it's going to take lots and lots of practice before we reach kind of a next stage in our development of these skills. Having role played and practiced that deep listening protocol a few times, you can then lead students in a final reflection about their growth as speakers and listeners, as question askers and folks who are hearing those responses. Students can reflect on their own skills, whether or not they've kind of improved in certain areas, one of those three components of deep listening, maybe which ones they still are feeling they have difficulty with. I think it would be great if they can even identify how they're going to further develop in that area. And if they have questions or don't know how, that might be where you step in. You'll also want to discuss with students how they can kind of take these listening skills that they've been practicing in class and carry them into other areas of life, into other parts of their world. So for example, students can, start to employ these skills as a son or a daughter, maybe even if they're of this age in their romantic partnerships, or as perhaps a member of a student group or community group, family member. Really try to ask them to imagine what the impact of using this style of communication, this style of listening and speaking might be, both in their academic career and also in their personal lives. And I think hopefully we'll be getting some really good responses about that. And if not, you might have students who say, I don't think this is going to be helpful, I'm not going to do it. I think that that's a really rich moment for some teaching and learning. Both hearing from a student about why they feel that way is important, and again, honoring the fact that they feel that way, as well as kind of addressing what it is they're saying. They may have some misunderstandings. Again, this could be family culture, and not necessarily meaning from another culture, but from family to family, the way we listen and ask questions and communicate can vary as well. So it's a good way to get to know your students more deeply. I would use the listening protocol in a variety of different ways. We don't have to just be doing this, let's say, in a homeroom or an advisory. We can also be integrating this work in other academic content areas. So for instance, I think a good example would be if students are discussing a story or a film, right? Ask them to get into pairs and share their perspective while their partner listens, without the need to kind of immediately jump in and offer their own perspectives. Or we could, once a week at various points, maybe throughout class discussions, you can highlight that third aspect of deep listening, which is, again, expressing empathy, and make a habit of asking students to paraphrase or maybe repeat what a fellow classmate has said, as well as kind of validate the feelings, if applicable, in that context. I would also say that you can play one or more of the games that Making Caring Common has produced. These are really quick and easy, evidence-based, low-lift games. Things like Echoing a Friend. We have one called Spotlight, A Cold Wind Blows. Games are just a great way to transition in and out of a strategy. Lesson could be something to play at other points in the day, whether it be during advisory or homeroom, like I said earlier, or at an all-school assembly, if those are still occurring in, again, virtual ways. These games are 2 minutes less. So if you're interested in hearing more about those, do get in touch. They're part of our Caring Schools Network offerings. So I guess, reach out to me or Elise if you're interested in hearing more about those. It's been such a pleasure to share about this strategy and these sort of core skills related to deep listening and asking caring questions. Your questions have been wonderful, and I really appreciate them. Appreciate all the work that you do to build more caring and inclusive school environments. And I hope that you'll get in touch with us if we can be a resource to you. Again, caringschools@makingcaringcommon.org is the email address. Otherwise, I hope that you'll get in touch via phone or carrier pigeon, however makes the most sense to you right now. We're here to field your questions, provide you the resources that will make your lives a little easier. So please get in touch. Thanks so much. And with that, I will go ahead and log off for today.